Okay, Jet fans, Darrell Revis.
Is off the board.
The New York Jets select
Mekhi Becton, Louisville.
Fired up to be a New York Jet.
Pressure just makes you go a little more. I kind of like pressure a little bit.
The New York Jets select.
Welcome to episode 3 of Jets NFL Draft Preview. Ethan Greenberg joined alongside The Athletic's Dane Brugler. Dane, Valentine's Day was yesterday. COVID world, the first Valentine's Day in a COVID world. We're actually getting closer to like year 2 in the pandemic. March 13th was the first day that we were told that we were not coming in the office, which is scary to think about. But before we dive into your mock draft, we have a juicy episode talking about the linebackers as well. How's your Valentine's Day?
Yeah, it was good. It's, like everything, it's a little different this year, but, a good time to spend with family. And, we didn't do anything too crazy, but, just spend time with family, the kids. They're getting to the age where they can start to make their own gifts. And so my 5 and 4-year-old gave us their gifts. And so it was a good little Sunday.
Before Valentine's Day, we got a mock draft from you, 3.0 on Thursday. And we're going to dive into this because it is pretty juicy. The Jets have, in your mock draft, they got 2 of the top 6 overall prospects on your top 100. And let's start with number 2 overall. You have the Jets staying put and taking BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. Now, Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 overall pick. Not really a surprise there. But why do you think that Wilson is the right quarterback for the Jets?
Yeah, and this was a trade-heavy mock draft, so I had a little bit of fun with it. And when I was trying to map it out where the trades would happen, obviously, the draft starts at number 2. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the first pick. And so, looking at possible trade scenarios at 2, could they maybe trade out of that spot? I just think that Zach Wilson there, it's a great opportunity to hit the reset button and you get some new quarterback blood in that room. And Zach Wilson, to me, is just a great fit for the offense. I think when you look at what you're looking for at the position, he checks a lot of boxes. And you want guys that are able to make that spontaneous, great decision. And he does that consistently with accuracy, with movement. He's got a whip before an arm. Zach Wilson, I think, is just such a great fit in this offense and the type of guy that if you're going to hit the reset button and build around a new quarterback, I think Zach Wilson makes a lot of sense.
And we will break down the top quarterback prospects in a later episode, but I do have some questions for you in terms of Wilson. Mm-hmm. Let's start with the medical history, because isn't there a bit of a checkered past there? And how confident are you that he will maintain his health in the NFL?
Well, I think if there is a negative to Wilson, it's his size. He's narrowly built. He doesn't have necessarily the build, the bulk on his body that you want. But and he does have some injury things in his past, especially with his shoulder, which is actually something from high school that he played with his freshman year, and then he had to get it cleaned up. Like every player, every prospect, the medicals are going to be very important. The NFL, the game of football, it's a game of attrition, and you have to be able to stay on the field. You're going to get beat up, and you have to be able to play through certain ailments. And a guy like Zach Wilson, he took a few licks. He got hit a few times, and are there any lingering effects? That's something for the doctors to answer. But as long as the medicals are good, I think you feel good about Zach Wilson moving forward. He's the type of guy that moves around in the pocket, so he's not going to be immune from hits. And so it's just one of those things where you have to kind of cross your fingers and, like a Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, some of these other quarterbacks that maybe aren't the biggest, they've really learned how to avoid injury by not getting hit, whether it's sliding, getting out of bounds, throwing the ball away. And those are just little things that Zach Wilson's going to have to pick up as he gets to the next level.
How's his vertical speed? Based on reading different articles, seeing different clips on Twitter, watching YouTube highlights, whatever the case may be, it seems like Zach Wilson is very good at buying time. But if he needs to tuck it and run, how is his speed there?
I think good enough. He's not, he's not Lamar Jackson, but he's got enough juice in his legs where if the yardage is there, he can get it. And I think that's what you like best about him is the athleticism. It's similar athleticism to, I'd say, like a Pat Mahomes, where I don't know that his 40 is going to be all that impressive, but he just moves so well and he's very mobile, so he can scramble, buy time in the pocket, and then if the yards are there, he'll take it. So I think he is a good enough athlete if you're looking for someone that can help you scramble and pick up yards with his legs.
I could ask you 1,000 questions about Zach Wilson, and I will when we get to the quarterback episode, but I'm just curious because this is more of a topical question. Over the weekend, there was a report that Zach Wilson was not, in fact, one of BYU's 8 team captains, and then there was a bit of a dispute because if you Google Zach Wilson, there are photos with him with a C on his jersey. So what have you heard in terms of, was he a captain, was he not a captain, and is it a big deal if he was not voted a team captain before this season?
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of context. When you talk about a true junior who still very young, and he was not named a captain before the season, but early during the 2020 season, he was named a captain. So it's one of those things where I look at it as a positive because he wasn't named a captain before the season. He didn't let that bother him. He didn't let that, pick away at him. He just went out there and balled out, and pretty soon into the season, he gained that captainship. So it's something that is, it's a label. More importantly, teams are going to go behind the scenes and find out, okay, family life and how did he relate with teammates in the locker room with coaches. How was he behind the scenes? I mean, there's so much more to just was he a captain or wasn't he a captain? There's so much more to that conversation because quarterback, as we know, is such an intangible position. And so much of it is how you relate to your teammates. Can you be a leader? Things like that are what NFL teams are doing now and investigating, whether, just where he ranks with these other quarterbacks in that area. And it's a threshold thing. He doesn't have to be the best leader in this draft class to be worthy of that pick, but he has to be, hit certain thresholds where you're going to feel comfortable with him as the face of your franchise and things like that. So up to this point, we haven't heard anything that would suggest that he can't be that guy, but teams are still working through all their background work. A lot of teams, they haven't had a chance to even sit down and talk to him yet and find out more about him as a person. So these things will be ongoing, these conversations, as we go throughout the draft process.
And when do you think that teams get a good understanding by what time of the process of each prospect? Would you say like mid-March after each player's respective pro days and virtual top 30 visit? Is that the timeline for that?
Well, I mean, I would think that for a lot of area scouts, they have a pretty good idea based off of, just all the work they did in the fall. And it's tougher this year because a lot of area scouts weren't on the road. And it's tougher with underclassmen because, most programs, you're not allowed to talk to underclassmen, only the seniors. So it makes it for underclassmen, especially with the pandemic going on, it's a little bit of catch up. And so for a situation like this with a Zach Wilson, I think right now going into the combine and then out of the combine, which, unfortunately we don't have this year, but all the virtual visits are still going to happen. He's still going to meet with a lot of teams, and they're going to ask him the pressing questions. After those interviews happen, I think teams have a much better idea.
All right, and then so that's the number 2 overall pick. Then the Jets had the 23rd overall pick. They still do in real life, but in Dane's mock draft, you have them trading up to number 12 with the San Francisco 49ers. The Jets give up Sam Darnold and the 23rd overall pick. The Jets get the 12th overall pick and a 2022 second-round pick. And with the 12th overall selection, you have them taking Rashaan Slater, your number 6 overall prospect at number 12. So one, I would imagine this is great value here for the Jets. And 2, why is Slater your 6th overall prospect?
Slater is he's rock solid. I think what I love most about him is he does not wait for the pass rusher to make a move and get on him. He gets on the pass rusher. He will go out and lock him down before he can do anything about it. He played right tackle, then left tackle. He didn't play this past season as an opt-out, but I think that he brings a lot of versatility. He can play inside, outside, and he's going to get dinged a little bit because he doesn't have that ideal length, but he's so smart. He's so coordinated. He's balanced. He plays with power. I think you can plug him in from day one. He's going to be your starter either at left guard or right tackle. So being able to land him here at 12, I think makes a lot of sense. And, it's an interesting trade because basically the Jets are giving up Sam Darnold for the equivalent of 2 second-round picks. But in this scenario, they have to use one of those second-round picks technically to move up to number 12 overall, which, you're getting a better player theoretically moving up, 11 spots. And we'll see, good chance that there's going to be 4 quarterbacks off the board in the first 10 picks. So, there's a good player that could be available for you there at 12.
And Slater, would you consider this very good value considering he's your number 6 overall prospect and the Jets in this mock draft him at number 12?
Yeah, I think so. This draft is quarterback heavy at the top, but it's not a draft with, just that blows you away in terms of the blue chip talent. There's not 5 players this year that are no-brainer top 5 picks. There's not 10 players that are no-brainer top 10 picks. But Slater is near the upper echelon of prospects in this draft, just in terms of what he offers, what he can be at the NFL level. And I think a big thing with Slater, again, is that versatility. He can play guard. He can play tackle. He's been working out as a center during his training just to, get that on his resume. So that versatility is a big reason why he ranks so highly for me.
And if you want to see Dane's top 100, check out the Athletic descriptions for a lot of the guys. And then obviously you see height, weight, school, position. But with Slater, you wrote something that said he has Pro Bowl potential as a plug and play guard. And my mind, when I see that, and then I see that you have the Jets selecting me at 12, is you have Mekhi Becton at left tackle, and then paired up potentially with Rashaan Slater. I mean, that has to get the juices going if you're a Jets fan, because that right there is a formidable left side, wouldn't you say? And a young one too.
No question. And, I think that would be a lot of fun. You plug those 2 guys in and, the run game, the passing game, it's a huge upgrade. And again, with Slater, if, they decide, Fant maybe he's not the answer at right tackle, kick Slater over to right tackle, and you've got the bookend tackles. I mean, you have that versatility and those opportunities with a player like Slater. So he just gives you a lot of different ways you can go, a lot of different options. And so when you're looking at the offensive line, you want to get the 5 best guys out there. And sometimes you need a versatile guy like Slater to help you get the best 5.
All right. So, and before we wrap up the mock draft talk, and we're going to be talking about different mock drafts throughout the course of February to April's draft, I'm just curious, who were some other options at 12 for the Jets if maybe they were there? For example, Jalen Waddle was off the board. Could you see that being a possible selection there? Similar with Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain, the top 2 corners in this draft, according to you. So who are some options at 12 that could fall there if the Jets were sitting there and if the teams in front of them went in a different direction in your mock draft?
Yeah, in this mock draft, after Slater, I think the next best player you could argue would be Elijah Vera-Tucker, another tackle guard, Micah Parsons, a linebacker from Penn State, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, who in my opinion is the top edge rusher in this class. I think he'd bring a lot of juice off the edge for a team like the Jets. I think he'd be a great fit in that scheme. Those would be the next guys that were available in this mock. But if one of those 2 corners were to fall, the three players that went in front of Slater in this scenario, Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain, and then Jalen Waddle, the receiver, any one of those 3, I think would have to be a strong consideration there at 12. The 2 corners, Farley and Surtain, Farley, the more physically gifted, athletically gifted, Surtain, the more polished player. He's been groomed for this chance since he was 5 years old, so he's ready to go from day one. And then Jalen Waddle, this guy is just a playmaker in every sense of the word. He can help. He can, not only is he have the speed and the burst, but he really came along this past year in terms of developing his routes. And so he can stress the defense in a lot of ways. He had 4 receptions of 75-plus yards in his career. He's just a playmaker. So you put him on the offense, I don't slot outside. He can do it all. I think he would have to be heavy consideration there at 12 if he's still available. All
right. That was a great tease of what's to come when we do a 7-round mock draft later in this segment. That was Dane's Mock Draft 3.0. You can read it on The Athletic. Be sure to check it out. Now let's talk about some linebackers. And, you have 4 in your top 25. Before we get into these guys, is that normal, or is this a strong year for the inside linebackers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is maybe a little strong. When in the past we've seen, 2 years ago with Devin White, Devin Bush, both went top 10. I think that this year, there's 2 linebackers at the top that are really, really, just gifted players. And it starts with Micah Parsons, and him and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, both these guys, they can go. They've got that athleticism that you're looking for. Parsons, he's really interesting because he was a pass rusher in high school. He goes to Penn State, and they moved him to linebacker. He led the team in tackles as a freshman, even though he didn't start. Then as a sophomore, he did start and set career best. Again, led the team in tackles. And then he opted out this past year. So you wish there was a little more development there as an off-ball player, just in terms of spacing, in terms of anticipation and coverage. But the athleticism, the reaction quickness, he's just a freak when you talk about size, speed, strength. He has the mentality to be a cornerstone for a defense. I think just, the maturity has to be checked out. You have to make sure that he is a guy that you can trust and he's going to be, fit your culture. But talent-wise, Micah Parsons absolutely belongs somewhere in the top 15 picks. And then Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he was perfect for that Notre Dame position that they run. And Clark Lee's defense, former defensive coordinator, now the head coach at Vanderbilt. He was a perfect fit for that scheme, playing a little linebacker, a little nickel defender. And the coaches really put a lot on his plate, and he answered by filling up the stat sheet. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, the Buckus Award winner as a top linebacker. You love the speed, closing burst. He can do so many things for you. He can mirror at the line of scrimmage. He can blitz. He can carry tight ends or receivers across the field. He creates explosion at contact as a tackler. I think, there's some undisciplined play there. He plays so cranked up that he's going to overrun some gaps, or, his finishing skills need to be developed a little bit. He'll miss a tackle here or there because he plays so fast. But the one-step explosion, the playmaking range, the intelligence, that gives coaches flexibility to deploy him, at linebacker, at safety, as a nickel defender. You can do so many different things, and that's what makes him a high-ceiling defender at the next level.
And those two guys are one spot apart in your top 100. Parsons, 13th overall. Owusu-Koramoah, 14th overall. And in terms of Parsons, the first thing that I thought of was the combine, because it feels like Micah Parsons would have been the next Penn Stater to blow the doors off of Indianapolis. You think about Saquon Barkley, Micah Parsons, or Mike Gesicki also had a very good combine. You think of Micah Parsons was next in line. And, you said something that kind of stood out to me. And you said that about his maturity. And in your top 100, you said that he needed to mature on and off the field. On the field, what did you mean by that?
Well, I think he tends to, zero in on the ball, and he needs to widen his vision so he, can see the side angle blocks. He can, locate different things in terms of what the scheme is trying to do. He is more of a see ball, get ball type of guy. And so in terms of his discipline and play recognition and understanding what the offense is trying to do, he can get better in that area. And then, off the ball or off the field as well, it's more of a maturity thing. I don't think that, teams don't believe he's a criminal or anything like that. We're just talking about a guy that, some teams feel just needs to mature in areas. So the interviews will be really important for him. And yeah, I think you're right about the combine. It's going to be a missed opportunity. There'll still be a pro day, and, I think we can assume that he'll be working out there, but Penn State's got a few of those guys this year. Jason Oweh, the defensive end, who I'm sure we'll be talking about, here in a few weeks. But Micah Parsons, yeah, he's a physical freak.
And then for Owusu-Koramoah, which is a handful to say, but we're getting there. So for him, 6'2", 220, you said that he could play nickel, he could play safety, he could play linebacker. His fit will be different from team to team. That's what you wrote. So for the Jets, let's say, now operating in a 4-3, they, in theory, have C.J. Mosley, who missed the past season. He opted out in the middle of that 4-3. Do you see Owusu-Koramoah as a fit on the outside, or is he in a 4-3 front more of a nickel safety player, and Parsons could be the better fit between the two of those guys in the Jets defense?
He's only limited by your imagination, and so I think if the coaches want to play him as more of a will in a typical 4-3 base, they can do that. If they want to use him as more of a rover like Notre Dame did, they can do that. If they want to run, we know teams are going to run mostly, sub packages and, try to match up with what the offense is doing. That's where Owusu-Koramoah, that's where his strengths come in, because you don't have to worry about getting him off the field. He can line up over the slot receiver. He can line up against a tight end. He can, spy the quarterback. He just do so many different things. And so that gives you creativity. It just lets you have different options with how you want to deploy your defense.
All right. So after Parsons and Owusu-Koramoah, you have another pair of linebackers also one spot apart, with Nick Bolton, your 22nd overall prospect, and Zaven Collins at 23. What's the drop-off between the first two and the second two? And can you just kind of talk about why Bolton and Collins are rated as highly as they are?
I'd say there's a little bit of a drop-off, and I think it just depends on what you're looking for. The first two guys, and Parsons and Owusu-Koramoah, I think are more scheme versatile with the different areas they could play at the next level. Where Collins and Bolton, maybe you need a little bit more of a right fit for them. With Collins, and these two guys are very different, by the way. Collins is more of your oversized linebacker. He's a big boy, and he never really played linebacker before he got to Tulsa. I mean, he's a high school quarterback and just played a lot of different positions. And he goes to Tulsa. They run like a 3-3-5 scheme. And they asked him to do a little bit of everything, and he did a really nice job. He helped out in coverage. He had 4 interceptions, 2 returned for touchdowns this past year. Just a large-framed linebacker who moves really smooth, and that means he can cover. That means that he has the range where he can cover both sidelines. Needs to be a little bit better with his take-on technique, so he can get rid of blockers in the hole, things like that. But he's just got a very unique blend of size, range, instincts. I think he's probably best in maybe a 3-4, where he's going to play that Sam role, where he can rush the passer, he can play off the ball, do different things. So he's a really intriguing player. Nick Bolton, I think, is more he's a better fit for a traditional 4-3, probably as an outside will. He's a little undersized, and that's the biggest worry with him. I think there's going to be some comparisons between him and Devin Bush, who went to the Steelers a few years ago, 10 overall. Bolton's a little undersized. You wish you were a little bit longer. You wish you were a little bit taller. But his range and his play style are outstanding. You love to play personality. As a run defender, he trusts what he sees. He has the vision to blow up runners at the line of scrimmage. Just that lack of size, it leaves a small margin for error. And you see that in coverage, where he's just a few inches away from making the play, but he just can't quite get there. So just needs to improve his consistency, especially in coverage. But the play speed, the instincts, the contact-driven mentality, that all translates to production at the next level. So I think he's a 3-down player if he continues to improve.
And how is Bolton's speed and his coverage ability? Because in your blurb on The Athletic, you wrote that he is a hammer in search of a nail, which leads me to believe he's a very good downhill player. But how about when he has to go in reverse?
Speed's not the question. I think he has the speed. It's more about understanding in his zone drops, where he needs to be. He needs to hit his landmarks. He shows better anticipation versus the run than he does versus the pass. And I don't think that's necessarily something he can't improve upon. I think he can. He just needs to develop a better feel for routes, for passing windows and zone coverage, do a better job with his bait drive. And he can get there. It's just going to take, some more experience. This is a guy that is football through and through. So he's going to hit the ground running as soon as he gets to the NFL and get working on that to prove he can be an every down player.
So you have 4 linebackers in your top 25. The Jets have 2 overall, 23 overall, 34, and then 2 picks in the 3rd round. So let's move out of the 1st round, or the top 32 players. And how about a player that you see fit more so round 3 than where the Jets are in round 2, and Pete Werner, whose father actually played with the Jets for a season?
Yeah, Pete Werner, and the key with him is all about versatility. Ohio State, they felt comfortable leaving him on the field really in any situation, all 3 downs. He's physical enough so he can match up downhill. He can use his hands, work off blocks, chase down the play. But you can also play him in space. He does a nice job with his outside leverage, zone dropping, holding up in coverage. He can just do a little bit of everything, and he offers the smarts, the toughness that NFL teams are looking for. So in the third round, I think he'd present some pretty good value for a player that, probably never going to make a Pro Bowl in his career, but it's just going to be a quality, piece to your defense.
How would you describe his career in Columbus? Just looking at his stats, 185 tackles in 4 seasons, 4 sacks, no interceptions, 13 pass defenses. So the first part is how would you describe his career? The second part is how would you describe his game?
Well, the coaches loved him. Urban Meyer said it was one of his favorite players to coach, and I think one of the reasons the coaches loved him so much is because he hated to leave the field. He would play on special teams. He would be an every down guy, and so the coaches really loved him. He was a big piece of that Ohio State defense, along with Baron Browning and Tuff Borland, Justin Hilliard. Ohio State could have 4 linebackers drafted in April, so it was a loaded position for the Buckeyes. But his game is again, it's all about versatility because he can do so many things for you, and he doesn't have to leave the field. So he's a 4-down player because again, he can play special teams, and so I think there's a lot of value in that if you can get him in the third round.
How about a day 3 player, a linebacker that you like?
I really like Tony Fields out of West Virginia, and he was started at Arizona. He played there for 3 years. He's a 3-year starter at Arizona, and then kind of looking for a new opportunity to help himself in the eyes of NFL scouts. He transferred to West Virginia for his senior year, and he had a great year. He led the team in tackles. He was Big 12 newcomer of the year on defense, first team all conference. He was one of the more impactful free agent signings in college football, put it that way. So he averaged 9.8 tackles per game. He was everywhere. You love the play range that he has. Just has a natural feel for the game. Quick to diagnose. He's got the athleticism where he can unlock and go. Toughness to make plays in the backfield. Now he's a little undersized, so he's a better run-around defender than he is take-on player. And that's where, that's why we're talking about him as a day 3 player, because he struggles a little bit near the line of scrimmage. But as an off-ball player who could be that run and hit type of linebacker, that's where his value is and where he can cover a lot of ground.
All right. So that was a great breakdown of the linebackers. And we actually, like I said, we take fan questions every week. We do have a couple more linebacker related questions. So let's just keep this train rolling. Let me look real quick. So the handle is nice to meet you. So nice to meet you too. Wants to know about Dylan Moses at Alabama and what his deal is. Obviously, Alabama national champions, Dylan Moses, the center of that defense. So where do you see him projecting not only in April's draft, but in the NFL?
Yeah, and Moses is such an interesting player because he was kind of groomed and handpicked to be this superstar at such an early age. I mean, he made headlines when he received his first scholarship offer from LSU as an 8th grader. So this guy, he's been kind of in the spotlight for a long time. He goes to Alabama. He was, SEC all-freshman, had a great year as a sophomore. He looked like a future top 10 pick, but then he suffered a knee injury going into his junior year, 2019 season. So he had to return this past year. And you know what? He just didn't look quite the same. And he even mentioned that his surgically repaired knee, it wasn't fully recovered. And he played through pain every single game. So, this is a really, really talented guy because of athleticism. He's got the movement skills to drop in coverage. He can play the run. There's so much you can do with an explosive player like this. But where is he medically? And that's something that is really going to come down to the doctors and his medical evaluation. The doctors are going to be the ones telling the NFL front offices where to put this guy on the draft board based off of what the X-rays say and what his forecast is medically.
So what's his talent? If you were just a greatest talent alone, what round would that go in?
Talent alone, based off of what we saw in 2018, he's a first-round player. So before this injury, you saw an athlete who could mirror, he's physically developed, a guy, like I said, he's been groomed for this for a long time. He trusts his vision to put himself in the correct position to make plays. He was, a valuable piece of that defense. It's not just athletically, but he was making all the defensive calls. He was getting teammates lined up. So the way he could track the eyes of the quarterback, infiltrate passing lanes, mentally and physically, the toughness is there. So he had a lot going for him, projecting as a first-round pick. But again, it just going to come down to the injuries. He had a Jones fracture on his left foot in 2017, but the big one's going to be the knee. At one point, he even admitted that he wanted to quit because it was, it's just so much pain with his knee. And so you have to wonder what's going on long term, and it's just going to come down to the doctors. Is he going to be a guy that can play out his rookie contract? Can he have a full 10-year career, or is he not worth taking the chance on? It's really tough for these doctors to make that distinction. And with no combine this year, it's going to be even tougher. But they'll get the medical evaluation done, and teams will kind of view it a little bit differently, I'm sure.
Awesome. So let's keep the linebacker train rolling. Gus wanted to know about a lot of players, one of them being Pete Werner. We covered him. Jabril Cox, we covered in a prior episode. But two guys that we have not talked about, Chaz Surratt and Monty Rice. So where do you have them rated in terms of your big board, and what do they bring to the table for NFL teams?
Surratt's, he's tough because there are a lot of things to like. He's a former quarterback. He was a high school quarterback. He goes to North Carolina as a quarterback. And about halfway through, he realized, okay, yeah, my future is not a quarterback. So he makes the transition to defense as a junior, and you would think he's playing the position his entire life. The last 2 years, after never playing the position, besides a little bit earlier on in his career, he had 206 tackles, over 22 starts. The athleticism that he showed at quarterback translated very well to linebacker. He's field fast, moves really well. The football IQ that it takes to be a quarterback, that translated to the defensive side as well. So, he's got shorter arms. He, has trouble taking on contact, needs to improve his run fits. But he's a high volume tackler. So, he's somewhere in that day 2 range, maybe more towards the 3rd round as well. And then, Monty Rice, he's your traditional Mike linebacker out of Georgia. He's a thumper. He's not afraid to come up and hit you. He's got that gritty, tenacious play style to him. Diagnoses well. He's very aggressive. He needs to do a little bit better job. His motor runs hot. He loves to go out there and hit you. So it needs to be a little more patient with his reads, his technique, things like that. It reminds me a lot of Micah Kaiser coming out of Virginia a couple of years ago as a prospect, and he went to the Los Angeles Rams, and he's been a really strong contributor on their defense. So, Monty Rice is going to be probably a day 3 pick, a guy that's not going to be an every down player and, might have some limitations, but he can be a valuable piece of, a valuable rotational linebacker on your defense.
Before we wrap up this episode of NFL Draft Preview, I'm curious, of all the linebackers we've discussed, including Jabril Cox and Baron Browning, who you briefly touched on in a prior episode, when you look at where the Jets select and you look at their scheme being a 4-3 front, is there a player that we've discussed that you think fits both categories in terms of could be there when the Jets are on the clock and would be a good scheme fit?
Well, let's assume that they don't take a linebacker 2 and that they don't trade that other pick in the 1st round. So, 23 overall, there's a strong bet that Parsons and Owusu-Koramoah are gone. And then I think it comes down to Zaven Collins or Nick Bolton. I think Bolton would be the better fit in that scheme. Bolton can play outside. He has the play speed. He's needs to get a little bit better in coverage, like we said, just more a consistency thing. But the play speed, the instincts, that's what you sign up for with a player like this. The football character is outstanding. I think it's going to translate very well to the next level. So, I think that when you look at what fits this team, Nick Bolton would make a lot of sense.
Awesome. Now let's wrap up this episode with an offensive question. Take a deep breath. We're done with the defense for the day. And Claude wants to know just what are your thoughts overall about the offensive guard class? And we will touch on the tackles and guards, really the interior linemen separately. But what's your overall thoughts in terms of an interior lineman class of 2021?
It's a pretty good class. And some of that is, projecting tackles inside, which a lot of teams are doing with, Elijah Vera Tucker from USC, probably a better guard than tackle. Alex Leatherwood for a lot of teams, he's on the board as a guard, not a tackle. So part of it is, some players making that transition from outside the inside at the NFL level, but you also have some really just bruising guards like Trey Smith from Tennessee, Deontay Brown from Alabama. And I think this position stretches a little bit. We could end up seeing 10, 11, 12 guards taken in the top 4 rounds or so. So it's a pretty strong position. I'm excited to talk about it with you more in a few weeks and kind of go more in depth.
Me too. I think that based on Twitter clips alone, I think fans will enjoy the tenacity of the interior, the tenacity of the interior lineman class in 2021. That's all we have here for this episode of NFL Draft Preview with the Athletic's Dane Brugler. Rate us, subscribe to us, ask us questions. We're breaking them all down right here on wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. So, Dane, thanks a lot. We'll check back in next week.
Thanks, Ethan.